Your physical environment is running a background program on your brain every single moment you're in it. And unlike the apps on your phone, you can't see it. You can't feel it happening. But the research on this is genuinely startling. And the moment you understand the mechanism, you'll start seeing your own life very differently. Here's the core idea. Your brain is a prediction machine. It's constantly scanning your surroundings and making micro-adjustments to how you think, feel, and behave, all based on environmental signals that have accumulated meaning over thousands of years of human evolution. The problem is that this process runs almost entirely below your conscious awareness. You think you're making decisions based on your values, your goals, your mood. But in reality, a huge portion of what you do in any given day is quietly directed by the room you're standing in. Let's start with something you've probably never thought about: ceiling height. Researchers at the University of Minnesota ran a series of studies where they put people in rooms with either 8-foot or 10-foot ceilings and gave them different cognitive tasks. The results were consistent. People in the higher ceiling rooms performed significantly better on creative, abstract thinking tasks. People in lower ceiling rooms did better on detail-oriented, focused tasks. The ceiling above your head is literally framing how your brain processes information. High ceilings trigger what psychologists call relational processing. Your mind zooms out, sees the big picture, makes connections. Low ceilings trigger item-specific processing. You narrow in, focus on the particular. Think about where you do your best creative thinking. Now think about the ceiling height of that room. Probably not a coincidence. But here's where it gets really interesting. It's not just architecture that's doing this to you. It's almost everything. Color is one of the most studied environmental variables in psychology, and the findings are both fascinating and a little unsettling. But before I give you the list, I want you to hold on to a question. If your nervous system is reacting to color before your conscious mind even registers it's there, what does that mean for spaces you've been sitting in for years? Keep that open, because the answer changes things. Red environments increase your heart rate and create a sense of urgency, which is why casinos and fast food restaurants use it so aggressively. Blue slows physiological arousal and has been consistently linked to increased creativity and calm. Green reduces anxiety and even lowers the perception of physical pain, which is why hospitals have been shifting toward it for decades. But here's the key. These aren't aesthetic preferences. They're pre-conscious biological responses. You don't decide to react. Your nervous system just does it, before you formed a single conscious thought about the room. So, when you painted your home office dark red because you thought it looked cool and professional, you may have unknowingly made yourself more anxious and more impulsive every single workday since, without ever knowing why you felt that way at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. Light works the same way, maybe even more powerfully. Bright, cool light increases alertness and critical thinking. Warm, dim light reduces inhibitions and increases willingness to take emotional risks. There's a reason first dates in dimly lit restaurants go better. There's a reason interrogation rooms are brutally overlit. The people designing those spaces knew something about your brain that you probably didn't. And natural light? It's in a category of its own. Studies consistently show that exposure to natural daylight improves mood, increases productivity, and even affects how optimistic you feel about the future. One study of office workers found that those sitting near windows slept an average of 46 more minutes per night than those without window access, and reported significantly higher quality of life scores. The window wasn't a luxury, it was a biological input. Now circle back to that question I asked at the start of this section. If your nervous system has been quietly reacting to the colors and light in your spaces every single day, responding before you're even conscious of it, then you haven't just been living in your environment. Your environment has been making decisions inside you. And that gets even stranger when you zoom out to the long term, because we haven't talked yet about what your environment is doing to your personality over time. There's a concept in psychology called behavioral residue. The idea that your environment doesn't just affect your mood in the moment, it slowly trains your default ways of being. The environments you spend the most time in are, in a very real sense, shaping your personality. Here's a concrete example. People who live in chronically cluttered spaces show measurably higher levels of the stress hormone cortisol throughout the day, not just when they're looking at the clutter, but as a persistent baseline. Over time, chronic cortisol elevation doesn't just make you feel stressed. It literally changes how your brain processes threat, how quickly you lose patience, and how risk-averse you become. The clutter on your desk isn't just aesthetically unpleasant. It's potentially making you a more anxious, more reactive person. And it compounds. Clutter increases decision fatigue because your brain has to constantly filter out visual noise. When you're decision fatigued, you become more impulsive, less disciplined, and more likely to make choices you later regret. So the mess that's just in the background is actually sitting in the driver's seat of your behavior more often than you think. On the flip side, minimally cluttered, well-organized spaces consistently produce calmer, more deliberate thinking. People who clean and organize their spaces before working report not just feeling better, but making better decisions. The act of ordering your environment activates a psychological state of control that transfers directly into how you approach your choices. Here's what that means at scale. If your environment has been quietly shaping your mood, your decisions, your cortisol levels, day after day, year after year, then some of what you think of as your personality might actually be your environment's signature. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. But to really understand how deep this goes, you have to go back to the beginning. Not just the spaces you're in now, but the ones that first built you. Think about the place you grew up, not the people in it, the place itself. The streets, the light, the sounds, the presence or absence of green space. Most of us have never considered that environment as something that acted on us, but the research says it did, and the effects are still running inside you right now. Kids who grew up with regular access to natural environments show better attention regulation, lower impulsivity, and more developed emotional resilience as adults than those who didn't. These aren't small effects. They're comparable in size to effects we'd normally attribute to parenting style or early education. The presence of trees, open space, and natural light during development helped wire how the brain handles stress, distraction, and emotional recovery. The physical world you grew up in was an architect, and it was working on you the whole time. But here's the thing. This isn't about blame or guilt for spaces you couldn't control as a kid. It's about something more useful than that. It's about recognizing that the self you walk around with today, your tendencies, your reactions, your baseline stress level, the way you handle pressure, that self was partly authored by every room, every street, every landscape you ever inhabited. Which means it wasn't all fixed at birth, it was built. And if it was built, it can be rebuilt. That's the part that changes everything. Because if your environment has been shaping you without your awareness, then the obvious move is to start shaping your environment with intention. And the reason I want you to take this seriously, rather than nodding along and doing nothing, is that the changes required are genuinely small. This isn't a renovation, it's a recalibration. Start with how you work. If you do creative work, get yourself into spaces with higher ceilings, cooler natural light, and minimal visual clutter. If you need to do detailed, focused work, a slightly lower ceilinged, organized space will actually serve you better. You're not fighting your brain anymore. You're giving it the environmental cues it already responds to. If your home feels chronically stressful, don't just attribute that to your life circumstances. Walk through it with fresh eyes and ask a specific question. What is my brain seeing here? What signals is this space sending? Clutter signals chaos. Poor lighting signals threat. Absence of natural elements, plants, wood, stone, daylight, signals an environment that your nervous system has never fully adapted to, because humans spent 99% of their evolutionary history outdoors. Your brain is still running that ancient code. Give it something it recognizes. Adding even a single plant to your workspace has been shown in multiple studies to reduce stress and increase productivity. one plant. The mechanism is something called attention restoration theory. Natural elements give your directed attention a break, allowing your brain to recover its focus capacity. Your eyes were designed to spend time on things that grow. Give them that. It costs almost nothing, and it works. One more thing worth saying. Sound matters more than most people realize. Moderate ambient noise, like the hum of a coffee shop, actually enhances creative cognition by introducing a level of diffuse stimulation that prevents the brain from over-focusing. Dead silence can make creative work harder, but loud, unpredictable noise tanks both mood and performance. The coffee shop effect from the beginning of this video is real, and it's not a placebo. The sound environment was doing something your home office wasn't. Pay attention to what your spaces sound like. Most people never think to adjust it. It's one of the most accessible levers you have. Here's the version of this I want you to leave with. Every single space you're in is making bets on who you're going to be while you're there. The question is whether you've been the one placing those bets, or whether the room has been doing it for you. Now you know enough to decide. Your environment is not neutral. It never has been. It's an active participant in your mental life, shaping your mood before you've had your first thought of the day, influencing your decisions before you think you've made them, and slowly, quietly contributing to the person you're becoming. The good news is that awareness is the beginning of agency. You can't unknow this. And once you start looking at your surroundings as a design problem rather than just a backdrop, you get to become a much more intentional author of your own experience. Drop a comment and tell me, which part of this landed hardest for you? Was it the ceiling height thing? The clutter and cortisol connection? I'm genuinely curious what's making you rethink your space right now, and I read every comment. Thanks for watching. If you got something out of this, hit the like button. It genuinely helps more people find this kind of content. And subscribe if you haven't yet, because I put out new videos regularly and you don't want to miss what's coming next. See you in the next one.